The story took place in Alaska in the early 20th century. The land stayed covered in ice and snow most of the year, and transportation mostly depended on sled dogs. In this place lived an experienced musher named Leonhard Seppala. Old Leonhard Seppala had always treated sled dogs as working tools. When Togo was a puppy, he was extremely mischievous. He simply refused to listen. Seppala thought the dog was nothing but trouble, so he gave him away to a friend. But the very next day, the friend complained the whole time and brought the dog right back. Seppala had no choice. He locked Togo inside a storage shed. Then he went out to train the rest of the dogs. Watching Seppala leave, little Togo became anxious. He began digging frantically, one hole, two holes. No one knew how many he dug. Finally, he managed to escape from the shed. As soon as he got out, he ran straight in the direction Seppala had gone. Before long, he actually caught up with the team. He rushed right into the middle of the dog line. The neat formation instantly fell apart when Seppala saw the disobedient little dog again. He was completely speechless. Togo also had a strange hobby, chasing reindeer. Whenever he spotted one, he immediately got excited. The other dogs followed his lead. Soon the entire sled team was pulling straight toward the sea. To deal with the little troublemaker, Seppala modified the shed. Then he locked Togo inside again. After that, he went back to his work. But he still underestimated Togo. The little dog sat on the floor, searching for a way out. And somehow, Togo always found a solution. Soon he spotted an opportunity. He was ready to break out again. The only exit was high above him. Togo began searching for a route. He tried climbing onto a chair, no luck. He tried another chair, still no luck. His legs were too short to jump that high. Then he opened a cabinet and climbed inside the cabinet. He discovered a path upward. Togo kept climbing. Soon the entire shed was a mess. He showed off the classic husky talent for tearing a place apart. At last, he reached the exit. With a small push, the door opened. Togo had escaped again. Then he ran as fast as he could to find Seppala once more. In the end, Seppala had no choice but to put him into the sled team. To his surprise, Togo ran incredibly fast. The dogs in the back could barely keep up with him. So Seppala moved the front dogs to the rear of the team. The once mischievous Togo suddenly became very obedient. He calmly waited while Seppala adjusted the lineup. Even when placed in the second position, Togo performed well. By the time they returned home, Togo had moved all the way to the front. That was when Seppala realized something. This dog was not just another sled dog. He was a natural-born lead dog. At that time, the town's children were in danger. A disease called diphtheria was spreading through the town. The only thing that could save them was a supply of serum. But the medicine could only be transported to a place more than 960 kilometers away from the town. Because the weather was so terrible, planes probably could not fly. So all the mushers were called together for a meeting. Seppala was the most experienced musher among them. The best solution now was to bring the serum back using sled dogs. But this mission was extremely dangerous. A once-in-a-century blizzard was about to arrive. Seppala decided not to take part in the mission. He quietly left the meeting. The town doctor caught a ride with him back to the hospital. As they passed the ward, Seppala saw the sick children. He stood there silently for a moment. Then he returned home and quietly began waxing his sled. Another team set out from more than 960 kilometers away. They planned to meet Seppala at a relay station halfway along the route, but Seppala had no idea this plan even existed. As the sled moved on to the ice, cracking sounds kept echoing beneath their feet. Then something happened. It was Togo. He guided Seppala back to safety. By now, Togo was completely exhausted. For a 12-year-old dog, he had already used up almost all his strength, but the relay still had to continue. The children in the town were still waiting for the serum. The medicine was finally handed to Seppala. He had no choice but to keep moving with Togo. This time, Seppala decided to head back the same way they came. He gave a quick command. "Let's go home." The dog team immediately started running back, but by now the ice beneath them had shattered into pieces. Every step felt like walking along the edge of danger. After a long struggle, they finally reached the shore, but another problem appeared. The floating ice beneath them had drifted away from the land. There was a gap of nearly 10 meters. If they waited any longer, they would all die out there. Seppala quickly drove an ice spike into the frozen surface. Then he pulled out a rope. He tied the rope around Togo. With all his strength, he threw Togo toward the opposite shore. At that moment, all their hope rested on Togo. One dog now had to pull an entire chunk of heavy floating ice. Togo charged forward with everything he had. Once, twice, 3 times. With every effort, the ice slowly moved, and they drifted closer and closer to the shore. After hours of travel, Seppala was completely exhausted. He eventually fell asleep on the sled. No one knew how long he had slept. Suddenly he woke up, but the dog team was standing still. Seppala walked over to Togo. He said, "Keep going, Togo. If we stop now, we're all going to die out here." But Togo didn't move. He stood there without taking a single step. Just then, a light suddenly appeared behind Seppala. He turned around. They had already arrived at the relay station. It was Togo who had guided them there. From that point on, the serum would be carried by the next sled team. Back home, Seppala's wife Constance had been waiting. When she heard the sound of dogs barking, she knew Seppala had returned. But in the next moment, she saw Seppala carrying Togo in his arms. The dog could barely move. 2 years later, one quiet day, Togo passed away peacefully, but he lived on forever in Seppala's memory. That was the end of the story. The serum relay that year involved 20 teams in total. 19 of those teams each ran about 50 kilometers on average, but Seppala and Togo covered an incredible 425 kilometers together. Later, a statue was built in Central Park in New York to honor the historic serum relay, but the dog in the statue was not Togo. It was the lead dog from the final leg of the run. It wasn't until 2011 that Time magazine named Togo one of the bravest animals in history. Only then did he finally receive the recognition he deserved. The photo you see here is a picture of Seppala and Togo together because of their courage. The children in that small town survived, and that is the end of the story of Togo 2019. The story of Togo reminds us that real heroes are not always remembered by everyone. A 12-year-old dog ran the longest and most dangerous part of the journey. If you were out there in a blizzard, how long do you think you could keep going? Do you think Togo was the real hero of the story? Let me know what you think in the comments.